Hello everyone, welcome to my new video. Today I will tell you about one of my favorite Russian music bands. It's called Aigel. It so happened that I managed to go to their concert here in Tbilisi and I decided to make a video about this. I already made this with I Speak, also one of my favorite bands and whose merch I'm wearing now. But in this video I will not only talk about Aigel's music, but rather about their cultural impact, because if we study this band, their history, their lyrics, it can tell us a lot about Russia and what is more about Russian ethnic minorities. For example, the Republic of Tatarstan, because the singer from this band is actually Tatar and some of the songs are in the Tatar language. So in this video I will tell you about Aigel's music, their political position, and about Tatarstan and the situation with the Tatar language in Russia. So let's begin. Aigel is a Russian electronic hip-hop duo consisting of lyricist and vocalist Aigel Gaysina and electronic musician Ilya Baramia. Their name comes from the Tatar name of the vocalist Aigel. Also, if you write the name with the capital letters and this Russian letter E looks like reversed N, and then you might read it as Angel, which is angel in Russian, but this is just my interpretation. I don't know if this was intended. I discovered this band in 2019, the same time as I Speak. Why I like their songs? Well, it is hard to explain because I have quite unusual relationships with music. Like, I can not listen to music for weeks, but when I'm in a mood, especially when I feel bad, I listen to some music, but I don't have a specific style. I mostly like pop music. I never was ashamed of the fact that I like pop music because, you know, at some point it was cool if you listen rock. I can listen to Instasamka or Cardi B and I don't mind the trashy lyrics because what is important for me is the sound itself. And Aigel has unique sound and Ilya is a very talented musician or DJ. And what is interesting is that they actually made music from different cities, because Aigel is from Nabережные Челны in Tatarstan and Ilya is from St. Petersburg. And when I went to the concert, the sound was even better than when you listen it on your phone. I don't know how it works, acoustics. When I stood there, I didn't drink anything. I think that if I drink, I would feel even better, but I don't recommend this to anyone. And I was just standing there at the concert. I went there alone and simply enjoyed the music. And under their video, I found a comment that perfectly describes my experience. I was at their concert the other day, and I can say that live performances with artistic acid hits and unstrained mystical vocals just trance you out. An incredible tandem. Yes, I agree with this, and their sound is just mesmerizing, especially in the song Dim, the chorus. Well, you just have to listen to it. Another song I like is Bush Bash. It is in Tatar, and I have such a vivid memory when in 2019 I was in a bar in Khabarovsk and I just returned from Moscow. It was my first time visiting the capital and I was just amazed by how huge and developed the city is. And I returned to Khabarovsk very cheered up. I went to that bar, it was Pivnaya Boroda, the beer beard. I don't know why you need this information. I probably drank some beer and I remember how this song was pulsating in my head. It is a very club song, and at the concert they also played it. Now I'll tell you something more about their music. Their debut album is called 1190. It is a reference to the prison sentence, because Aigel's partner was sentenced to 1190 days in prison, and in this album she shares her experience of waiting for him to be released. It is an album about Russian judicial system and prisons in Russia. This album is released in 2017, but now is also relevant. And I don't listen to the songs from this album because they would make me depressed. They're just creepy when you listen to them. Which brings me to talking about why the musicians actually left Russia recently. The thing is that in today's Russia, it is impossible for celebrities to stay silent because they either make a statement and leave Russia, or they swear allegiance to the government. For example, when the Russian blogger Anastasia Ivleeva made a naked party, and after that the government, especially the government, not the people, was really outraged, and after that they had to make an apology video. And Philipp Kirkorov, who also participated in that party, who is like the gay icon from the 90s. He is a well-known representative of the Russian bohemian celebrities, and he had to go to Donbass and perform in front of the soldiers, which is just like I'm used to seeing him with feather costumes. Anastasia Ivleeva also used to criticize the authorities, and when in 2017 she was asked what would you say to Putin, she answered, "Aren't you fucking tired?" But now, answering the same question, she says, "How I can help?" Ivleeva actually opposed the war in 2022, and on Instagram she called the authorities to stop. But now she tells about how she went to Donbass and that she didn't understand anything and changed her mind. Another sad case is the musician Alena Shvets, who used to sing songs in support of LGBT. I remember her very emotional song called Two Girls. It is about how cruel the world can be when two girls love each other. Her music was a beacon of light. But recently the authorities went after her, and Ekaterina Mizulina, the face of the Russian censorship and denunciations, complained to the prosecutor general's office in order to check Alena's songs for LGBT propaganda. And Alena had to change her position. She said that she in fact never promoted non-traditional orientations, and that now she emphasizes only traditional values in her art. For this, Alena received backlash from fans who grew up on her songs, but the funniest part is that now her concerts are still sometimes get cancelled because some active parents write complaints and threats. This is what happens when you try to compromise with the system. It makes me very sad to see this happening. It is just public humiliation. And why didn't they leave Russia? Well, we don't know their situation. There must be serious threats from the higher-ups in the government and simply money. Well, there are celebrities who didn't make any move. They did not go completely Z, and thanks to them for this. But also they did not make an anti-war statement, clearly. Again, Ivleeva was one of them, but what happened to her? Now more and more people will have to do something to prove their loyalty to this government. But anyway, returning to Aigel, I watched a big interview of them with the Russian journalist Yuri Dud. He also left Russia and cannot or fears to return there, and now he interviews Russians who live abroad. And in the interview, the musicians told how they felt after the war outbreak. Aigel said that she felt very depressed, she didn't know what to do, and actually they were supposed to play a concert just 2 days after the outbreak of the war in Novosibirsk. She first wanted to cancel it, but Ilya, on the contrary, was very active and angry, and he convinced her to play this concert. And she said that many months ago people thanked them for this. Thank you that you still had the concert because it was needed. And it's interesting that they stayed in Russia for some time after the war started, and they left approximately in summer 2022. It is actually similar to my situation because I also left in September 2022, and I think it is a unique experience that I had to see these Z stickers appearing around me, and I think it can be compared to an experience of living in Nazi Germany. So Aigel said that she wanted to stay in Russia as long as possible, to see it all with her eyes and then to express it and describe in her art. But then it became hard for them because the authorities started to cancel their concerts or not to let them to musical festivals. And Aigel said that when the new academic year started, she did not take her daughter to school because she did not want her children to be indoctrinated by this military propaganda, because in today's Russia there are new lessons in schools, for example, the conversations about the important, where they talk about patriotism, how Russia is great, basically. There are military preparation lessons or meetings with the heroes of the special military operation. It's just terrifying pictures of these Wagner soldiers in masks who come to school and speak to children. And Ilya also shared that he took his family out of Russia because he did not want his kids to grow up in this Soviet mindset. He says, I myself was growing up in the Soviet Union, and I remember how glad I was when it collapsed and Russia opened to the world, but now it all is coming back. Aigel also said that she started to be paranoid. She was scared that the police will break into her apartment at 5 in the morning, and that's how they decided to leave Russia. And maybe you think that it is a comfortable position because they followed the popular route to improve their reputation, because it's kind of popular and woke to be against the war in today's Russia. Yes, Aigel Band has a digital product, music that they can sell online, but they left all their audience, all their fans in Russia, and now they only can perform for Russian emigres like myself. Well, I think I don't have to explain that when you are forced to leave your country with your kids and build a new life in another country without the possibility to return to your home country, and also under the constant risk, I think it is not a normal situation. And there are many other musicians who did the same, for example, Noise MC, B2, Zemfira, Monetochka. I'm, by the way, going to her concert as well. And yeah, there are many decent people who stayed in Russia, because Russia has approximately 140 million population and only several millions probably left in the past 2 years. So I don't even understand what people now experience inside of the country. Yes, I talk to them, but what I hear is that they are even more depressed, anxious. I am really well off here in Georgia. Now I will tell you about other songs. This is a song, You Are Born. And in 2020, Aigel posted a music video where an old politician goes into the icy water and a new and young person returns. It is a reference to the Russian tradition to go into the icy water during the Epiphany, and I actually made a video about this in Khabarovsk. And the most striking thing is that this music video was posted just 2 days after an announcement appeared that Putin will change constitution. And what Aigel shared in the interview is that it was just a coincidence and they didn't know about this. So yes, in 2020 the обнуление happened. This is how we call this process. Обнуление is resetting to zero, nullified. So Putin just zerofied himself so that he added a new amendment to the constitution that erases his previous presidential terms. And I remember that back then we were panicking, like, what? Putin is going to change constitution so that he will be able to rule Russia until 2030. And there were big protests in Russia, but anyway, in the summer they held these elections on a stump. They literally voted on the stumps in car trunks, but it was due to the COVID restrictions. And now I'm looking this from the future, 2024. Yes, Putin re-elected himself, and now he is the president of Russia until 2030. It seems so crazy, like 4 years passed and we are still here.
So we have one song which was quite actual 5 years ago. Now it's not actual because there is another song.
Probably one of the most popular songs and music videos from Aigel is Tatarin. It is a song about a guy who is released from prison and returns to his hometown, and he brings his new prison mentality, habits, aggression, the toxic masculinity. He brings it all to the normal life. And this is rather a meme song. It says, "My boyfriend is Tatar, he is dangerous, blah blah blah." And this song is not only about the Tatar culture. I think it is very familiar to all regions of Russia, because I saw such mentality, such ethics when I was growing up in Spassk. We have like 3 prisons in our town. You probably know the word gopnik, so this is what this song is about. And I realized it just now, but this video depicts what will happen to Russia when all these people will return from the special military operation. Because instead of serving for 20 years in prison, they were released, went to the special military operation, and if they stay alive, they will return and bring all this mentality, bring the war and the prison to the normal life, and it's terrifying. But anyway, I like this song. It is catchy. It has also Tatar words. And at the concert, there was such a cool moment when Aigel asked, "Are there Tatars in the hall?" And many people shouted.
Tatar girl, and this song is about a Tatar guy, a bad Tatar guy.
There's another popular song from them. It's called Pyala. It's also in the Tatar language, and this song became viral because recently it was used as soundtrack in a very popular series Slovo Patsana, The Boy's Word. It is a series about criminal gangs in Tatarstan in the 90s, and there was a discussion in the Russian society, and many people said that this series romanticizes criminal culture, but I don't think like this. I think that it, on the contrary, condemns it. What I like is how they managed to depict the grayness of the Soviet Khrushchevkas, the Kami block. If you love this doom aesthetic, I also recommend you to watch it. And what I like is that Aigel music made a big impact on just popularizing the Tatar culture, the language, and in the interview they also visited a community of Tatars in Berlin, and it was interesting for me to learn that there are sometimes communities of people like Buryats in South Korea or, I don't know, Yakuts in the United States. And I like how in the interview the journalist gave these Tatar guys the opportunity to tell about their struggles, how they feel now, and he asked them how your identity changed after the war. They shared that after the beginning of the war they started to reflect a lot on their self-identification, and this woman, Dinara, says that growing up in Kazan, she was ashamed of speaking Tatar because it was considered village-like. And even if you speak Russian with Tatar accent, also was shameful. She also said that she felt proud when people mistook her for a Slavic person because she has lighter hair and she doesn't look like a typical Tatar, probably because on average they have darker hair. Overall, it is a big conversation about decolonization, and what is very interesting is how Russia colonized all these regions, because in history books and in common discourse in Russia we say that Russians, I mean Moscow authorities and like people who lived in regions near Moscow, that Russians settled in Siberia or they expanded to the east. But in fact, there also were wars invasions, massacres. For example, when Ivan the Terrible sieged Kazan, the guys also talk about this. They say that in Tatarstan they used to have a commemoration day where they grieved about the population of Kazan that was invaded by Ivan the Terrible like centuries ago. But recently the authorities just banned this rally, and it wasn't a big protest, it was just a march where people grieved. But I think it is overall the tendency of authorities in Moscow to prevent separatism and destroy self-identity and agency of other regions, and especially ethnic regions. They also shared how in 2017 the government banned obligatory studying of Tatar in schools, which destroys the infrastructure for Tatar-speaking people. And yes, they of course speak Russian in Tatarstan, but with my somewhat interest in languages, I think it is terrible when the government is not doing anything to support the languages that are dying out. Well, maybe Tatar is not dying out, it's not in the war situation, but if we look at the languages of my region, Primorsky Krai, like Udege, the Nivkh, it is just outrageous how there is just nothing done to somehow keep these cultures, to revive them. And I mean, it is obvious that well-being of ethnic minorities or simply people who suffered from the flood is not the biggest priority of the Russian government. And of course, people have different experience, and for example, Aigel shared that she heard another side of this story, and she spoke to a Russian guy, a Slavic guy, who was growing up in Tatarstan in the 90s, and he shared that he actually felt scared because after the fall of the Soviet Union there was a growth of nationalistic movement in Tatarstan, and he was scared because he was Russian. So she said, for me it was like acknowledging my privilege as the majority, as Tatar in Tatarstan, and understanding that some people might feel different. But yeah, if we look on a bigger scale, then Tatars are the ethnic minority if we compare it to the whole Russian population. And still, in most cases, it is non-Slavic Russian who experience xenophobia in Russia than vice versa. I think it is so important that they have many songs in the Tatar language, because Aigel also shared how one of the fans told her that he is a language activist, and he was surprised when he first heard that there is a whole album in Tatar, because he, as an activist, is used that his every statement is political. It is about the language or about the culture. It was so amazing for him to see that there is music in his native tongue, and it is not a political statement, but it is just a song about love, relationships, simply life. And as a person coming from the Far East, I wish Russian regions had more independency, agency, and I also wish Moscow, the authorities in Moscow, did not steal all our resources, because Tatarstan has a lot of oil, Yakutia has diamonds, and this all goes to the center of Russia. I'm not even talking about Russia breaking into different pieces. I think it will be dangerous for Russia and for these small regions themselves, but I'm speaking just about normally working federation that Russia is de jure, but in fact all regions are colonies of Moscow. So this was my video about Aigel, about their music, the Tatar culture. I wanted to make this video educational because I wanted to make content about Russia, but I'm not there. That's why I used this concert as an opportunity to do that. And it was so cool to be surrounded by like-minded people. We also were chanting "No to War." At this point, it became a ritual at every concert of Russian musicians abroad. I don't know for how many years Aigel will have to live in European countries. I don't know when I will be able to return to Russia, but this is what we have now. Anyway, I hope you like this video. Subscribe to my channel, write your comments below. I will see you soon. Goodbye. Пока-пока.